Hello and welcome to Talk Back Wednesdays, a show project of the MCM Youth Media Academy. Each Wednesday, we welcome guests who will help us learn more about an aspect of the media that we are working on. This week, our theme has been photography. Today's guests will help us understand photography a bit more as we work on our media posts.
Let's welcome our first guest, Enoch Al-Sham. Enoch is a professional photographer who has worked with 3 independent magazines, including Capital Magazine, Experience Reality Magazine, and Responsible Artistry Magazine. During his career, he has worked as a touring photographer on the music side of the industry and capturing events, nightlife, and parties while shooting photography for weddings, headshots for actors and performers, and photo shoots for all types of clients. Enoch is still evolving as a photographer and has been capturing beautiful moments for the past 10 years.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Our last guest is one of our MCM Youth Media Academy instructors, Linda Lawson. Miss Linda is an independent producer and digital media consultant. For more than 30 years, she has partnered with numerous nonprofit organizations, public health agencies, government programs, and small to medium-sized businesses as a digital media specialist, project manager, and trainer. What started as a request for Linda to document federal meetings and events has developed into a passion. In response to the challenges she sees globally, Miss Linda uses her technical skill in photography, video production, post-production, and event management to produce, strategize, and organize events, programs, campaigns to advance progressive causes. Most recently, she served as the lead trainer at DCTV, DC's community media organization. At DCTV, she delivered courses in editing, field, and studio production. She is currently a part-time instructor at Montgomery County Media and provides production services and training for organizations and small businesses. We'd like to welcome everyone to the show.
Our first question is, what are the 3 things that a person starting out in photography should consider when beginning to take photos?
The 3 things, there are a couple of things that you should take in consideration. What type of style that you want to shoot? What do you prefer? Looking at different type of cameras that you want to look into purchasing, because there are all type of cameras out there. You really don't have to go for the money makers. You really don't have to go for the expensive cameras. You can always shoot your photos and documentaries and things of that nature on any type of camera. And I think that what you would have to do is focus on what you prefer. What are the best things that you like taking photos of? If it's family, friends, candid photos, and you have to actually find your niche in the process of you going that direction of being a photographer.
I would agree, and I would piggyback on what Mr. Enoch says and say, all of us are carrying cameras in our pockets right now, and you can get started at any time, starting to practice. You know, I like Mr. Enoch, I've been actually doing photography for money for the last decade, and I'm still learning, but I find that the more I shoot, the better I get. And you start to develop your style. But I think the number one thing that I have learned and I'm still trying to perfect is the use of light and trying to find the light and how light can shape, the story, can shape the mood, can, help you to achieve the type of photos that you want to shoot.
Our next question is, what are some of the recommendations you have for someone who takes photos with their photos and wants quality pictures?
Well, when it comes to creatures, and so that would include people as well as, animals, one of the things that you want to work on is trying to nail your focus, okay? And to make sure that you have a focal point. So placing your subject in the frame so that you know where your viewer should look. But nailing your focus includes focusing in on in the case of humans, on their face, specifically their eyes. And the same is true with creatures. So that takes a bit of practice, especially with, you know, things like animals, or, you know, creatures like animals other than people, because you can't, you know, say, well, please sit still, bird. So it takes a bit of practice. It really does. And so if you're a wildlife photographer in particular, it takes a lot of patience and study of the kinds of creatures that you want to shoot. So if you shoot birds, you want to study birds, and then so that you know how to anticipate where the bird is going to move.
Yes, I definitely will agree with Miss Linda on that. And also I would add on too, try to find a focused subject. Maybe it's just practicing with a empty soda can or a rock or something that's not going to move as much, so you can start to get your practice in with the focusing and the manual focusing and also the auto focusing. And then maybe move on to moving objects, such as something that maybe move a little slower than a car or something of that nature, maybe like a dog or a cat, and just focus on the movement of that. And once you get that, then move on to cars and, as Miss Linda said, the wildlife, because they move a little more faster than anything else. So that's how you can get clear photos, whether it's through professional camera or your phone. That's how you can get clear photos. It's just focusing on that object that doesn't move first, and then gradually move ahead with that.
And I would add that luckily, because a lot of us are using our mobile devices, those devices take a lot of the control away from you, and you can focus on the composition and freeze the motion. But when you then step up into different kinds of cameras, you're going to want to understand how your camera works so that you can get those crisp photos. I mean, I think, you know, a lot of us, we do start with on automatic on other cameras, or we start with our phones. But like I said, as you, in your course at MCM, we're going to focus on how to use your camera in the manual mode. And that way you can have more control, more creative control.
Right, right. And that's what it's all about, just having creative control and being able to adjust, especially using manual settings. That's when, as Ms. Linda said, that's when you have full control of creativity, and you are in control, not setting the camera to be in control for you. And even shooting in manual, you would have a lot of practice with that, because you would see where you made a mistake and that you can easily correct it through the manual focus of that. Autofocus is just basically you telling the camera what to do. Instead, no, the camera's telling you what they're going to shoot and how they're going to create that image for you. But manually, you are in control of your content and how you shoot your content.
Our next question is about photo hacks. What are some techniques you can do as a photographer that you came up with on your own to help you take better photos?
That's a good question. It's a good question to the point of, I don't think, well, for me personally, I don't think I write it down. I think I'm always in the moment. And if something doesn't go as planned, I immediately go to a go-to moment of a photographer hack. Let's say, for instance, if, you know, the lighting is horrible and only thing you can use at that point is the actual flash, horseshoe flash that comes with your camera, or your camera phone flash. And the hack for me, if I can't get that moment, because sometimes within that moment, you can only get the photo that one time. You can only capture it that one time. You would never get it again. And I think for me, the photo hack that has been for me is using the horseshoe flash, grabbing the photo, already shooting in manual, already shooting in RAW, and then I'll bring it to my cutting board, and I can actually bring down the lighting if there's too much lighting. That is a hack for me that I've used a couple of times, and that saved me a lot of time in capturing that moment that I needed, and that's been a hack for me.
I would say, because I was stumped for a moment too about hacks. There are lots of things that you learn as a photographer over time, but one of the first things, especially when you are using cameras that are like DSLR cameras, is that you do set up your camera so that you have maximum flexibility. So for example, Mr. Enoch mentioned shooting in RAW, and a lot of people don't know what that is. So that's a setting, like typically when we take pictures on most devices, and particularly in auto mode, you usually get what we call a JPEG. You've seen that, the .jpg. Those images are compressed images so that it's a little more difficult to adjust things like the exposure and the color or the white balance, and so if you set up your camera so that it shoots in what we call RAW, that's a much bigger file with more data. And so that's what separates people who are like kind of more serious about their photography from those who are casual shooters. Though I would say that more than anything, practice, practice, practice. Shooting is what you really want to do. And then, yeah, when you start using, those cameras where you can set the manual settings, you can set up your camera to shoot those bigger files. And then in post-production, when you're editing, you can make those adjustments. But other hacks might include, for example, again, learning more about light, where light is coming from, how to shape light. That's going to be extremely important as a hack, because then you're always able to solve problems. Okay. And sometimes that might mean taking a lamp in a room and bouncing it off a wall to give your subject more light and make a pleasing looking photo. So I would say my number one suggestion is start to pay attention to light and where it comes from, when it's natural light, the time of day, and that kind of thing, because that's going to be the secret to getting the best photos in my mind.
Right. Absolutely. And I think another hack for me would be, since I've done a lot of concert photography, you're dealing with a lot of blue light, red light, green lights, and a lot of lights are flashing. The hack for me at that moment would be to shoot in black and white. So therefore, you're not getting a lot of ambiance lighting. You're not ruining your photo. And that has been a hack for me doing concert photos, because once again, you're living in the moment. Once again, you may not never get this shot again. So each concert that I've shot in black and white because I don't want to miss that moment. And then if I need to, as Sister Linda said, if we're talking about RAW, if I do need to adjust lighting once I put it on the editing board, I can do that. But at that moment, I'm shooting in black and white because I need to get that photo at that moment. So that's another hack as well.
I have another question. So for animals that move a lot, how would you get the perfect shot?
Well, as I mentioned before, it depends on the animal, the species. I think the number one thing that I've come to understand and would recommend is that you study how that creature moves. So I mentioned birds, but it could be squirrels, it could be anything. I think knowing something about the subject will make a huge difference. And even with humans, when you do portraiture, the best thing you could do is like work on your people skills and how to sort of get people to relax with you and be natural with you, because often when people have their photos taken, they want to pose, and that doesn't necessarily translate really well as a photo. It's not very authentic, if you will. It just depends on what type of photography you're doing. So the best thing I can say is you want to know something about your subject matter. So if you shoot birds, just keep picking on birds because birds move very fast, anticipating where they're likely to go, or it could be insects. anticipating where they're likely to move will help you to capture that shot. And also, depending on the type of camera, also knowing the settings that you'll need to use in order to freeze the motion, because chances are they're going to move.
Especially birds, because they can just land for only 5 seconds and they're gone. So therefore, shooting animals teaches you patience. It teaches you how you have learned your subject, whether it's birds, cats, or dogs, how they move, anticipating the movement of that particular bird. If a cardinal lands on a fence, you know that cardinal bird is probably not going to be there that long. So if you already have your camera out and you're ready to go, you only probably got maybe 15 to 10 seconds to snap this bird or to capture this particular bird. So you definitely have to know your subjects. I always go back to the great Gordon Parks, who actually, he always sat down and took a moment with his subjects, with his family, whoever he was going to shoot. He never took his camera with him. He always wanted to know his subjects. He always wanted to know the family, whoever he was shooting, because he wanted them to feel comfortable around him. And then he will actually pull out his camera. Now the family is comfortable around Gordon, and he's able to get any and all pictures that he needs. So it always goes back to learning your subject, knowing what you want to shoot and how you want to shoot it. And that's the best way. A comfortable subject is the best person you can, or thing that you can ever grab a caption of.
So we have one more question for you, and that is, what are 3 tips you learned over your career that have made you a better photographer and that you didn't know starting out?
You want to go first, Ms. Lindo? You want?
You know, I always say I am still learning. It's always a struggle. I think the number one thing is, when I'm on a shoot where I'm being paid, is to have redundant equipment. And that's true in video or photography. I always have a second camera with me, because you just never know. Oh my goodness, anything could go sideways. And so that would be the hot tip if you're planning to do this and make money. Yeah, you could get away with having one camera for a little while, but you would eventually want to save up and have just another one, even if it's like something that's not your first love camera, but just so that you're at the ready. The other is, you know, on that subject, if you're doing, you know, photography for money, is preparing the night before, making sure you have all of your batteries and media and everything ready to go. Yeah, because it doesn't, no one cares if your camera breaks or your batteries are dying. No one cares.
Right.
So,
Right.
so that's what I would say from the paid side. Now, as a hobbyist, I would say shoot a lot. I don't do enough shooting, honestly. I don't. But I'm trying to push myself. And so sometimes it's great if you can have a goal. And I mentioned in our class that it's really great to do like a 30-day challenge where you have to shoot different kinds of subjects, and you know, you'd be surprised at the things that you will learn about yourself and about what kind of photography you want to do.
And I would say, on the hobbyist side and on the paid side, always make sure you have enough batteries for your camera, number one. Number two, make sure you have your SD cards. Don't leave home without it, because I have done that twice, or a couple of times, not just twice, a couple of times. And man, that is the worst thing to ever happen to me, because now you have to go to the CVS or the nearest drugstore and see if they have a SIM card that fits your camera. You don't want to pay 30, 40, 50 more dollars for an SD card that you just left at home. So that will be very frustrating. And number three is to have fun. No matter what you're doing, whether it's paid or hobbyist, have fun. Because if you don't have fun, no one else is going to have fun while you're shooting them. And you want everyone to have fun while you are engaged in whatever event it is, a wedding, a concert. You want people to say, oh, look at that photographer, they're having a good time. That makes everyone else have a good time. That's how I look at it, is just always have fun whatever you're doing in life, always have fun and enjoy doing what you do. And I think the bonus tip would also be continue to shoot. Always learn your camera, always learn your equipment, always be ready for the unexpected, because you never know what can happen in the realm of photography and videography. You never know what can happen.
Well, that's all the time we have. Thank you for joining us today, and I want to thank each of our speakers for sharing their experiences with us. We'll see you next time on Talk Back Wednesday. Take care.